spoken your piece. Yes?
When there's a cancer, you need good diagnosis, sometimes surgery and chemotherapy. And you said some unpopular things. Maybe it's not a question of popular or unpopular, but there's not only that some hard things need to be said, but they need to be reflected upon and acted upon. There is a pattern that this invasion reflects. What happened in Polish-Ukrainian relations, and I refer to that as, a sign of hope, is that Poles recognized the identity, the dignity, and the human, cultural, and political aspirations of Ukrainians. There's a failure of Russian culture to do so. Russian culture is deeply imbued with an imperial identity. And empires exist by having colonies. Empires enslave you. And for there to be peace between Ukrainians and Russians, the slaveholders have to understand slavery is over. There can be no more slavery. That's not happening yet. When in Russia, correctly, there are experts here that from the Church of Russia, when out of 25,000 clerics, priests, and deacons, there's only 293 that speak out, that sign the document against this war. It's about 1%, a little more than 1%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any Russian Orthodox bishop of Russia has spoken out against this war. Not a single one, about 300. We won't speak of the patriarch's position. Metropolitan Orthodox was probably celebrated in this church, welcomed in this church, is received an honorary doctorate from St. Nicholas. Tells people you have to obey the patriarch. While 15 of the diocese eparchies in Ukraine out of 43 of the Moscow Patriarchy have stopped commemorating the patriarch. He is saying, no, you have to listen to Kitty. If 700 university presidents in Russia signed a document in support of this war, 700 university presidents. Now, it's hard to have reliable sociological surveys in a country that is authoritarian and becoming totalitarian. But the Levada surveys show that 80% of the population supports the president, 70% support this war. We'll cut it in half, and if 40% support this war. It's a deep, deep problem. There's a reason why European and American leaders did not understand what was happening. They could not listen to what Ukrainians were saying. One nuncio, I won't say in which city, which country, because we are in solidarity with the Catholic Church, but one nuncio says, I can't believe that the people in Kharkiv are defending themselves as they are. And I said, Your Excellency, because you have been listening to the Russians too much. You don't listen to the Ukrainians. There's a problem with Slavic studies in America. Slavic studies are 95% Russian studies. Even in Catholic universities where there's a lot of Poles, you won't have Polish taught. These things have consequences. We see in the United States how much we suffer from the sin of racism. 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, racism is still profoundly present and ingrained in our society, our culture. In Russian society and Russian culture, imperialism is deeply ingrained. Colonialism is a mindset. The priest that Father Andriy Duchenko spoke about, accompanying the troops, the professor of homiletics at the Moscow Seminary, remind me of his name, who said, well, yes, we need to capture Ukraine, and then it's Georgia, then the Baltics, and we have to undo that illegal thing that Gorbachev did. I'm thinking, for an empire, you construct a Soviet model according to which you as an Orthodox were persecuted. It's subconscious. It's gotten pretty deep into the marrow. And somewhere, somehow, people have to talk about it. And I think that in the Orthodox Church of America, here in this cathedral, this is a historic moment. This church that grew out of the metropolitan, the autocephaly of which was guided by Sir Cherny's father. A church that was very much in its elite in the Russian tradition. And today, there is a prayer for those being killed in Ukraine. Things are being named. I think this is a very important moment. Thank you for it. And I want to add my voice by supplementing what our host, his Beatitude, said, is supporting Metropolitan Mufti. I want to add my support to Metropolitan Epifani and to his Beatitudes of Islam, and to the Muftis of the Muslims, and to the courageous Jews and evangelical Christians in Ukraine who are together. It is important that we keep them together. They are together there under these missiles, trying to address the trauma of the people of Ukraine. May this initiative continue. May we have the courage to speak, to pray, maybe sometimes the courage to be silent, but also to do. And again, I reiterate the gratitude of Ukrainians for Americans and people of faith in the United States for their support. This is not a matter of one-upmanship. Catholics are in tens of millions, but according to my rough estimates, American Catholics have contributed $100 million for the humanitarian needs of people. I'm very grateful to, this is primarily Roman Catholics, not Eastern Catholics, but for this generosity, Orthodox and Catholics and Protestants, of citizens who have been moved by the suffering moved by the courage of Ukrainians, and who stand for justice and the triumph of God's will, which is peace and joy of his people. Again, this was classic.
We do have one question from online, and this will be our last question, I think. While we realize the latest unrest in Ukraine was instigated by the Russian invasion, the violence in eastern Ukraine has been going on since 2014, including against Russian speakers. I was wondering if the panelists would at least address the events in the Donbass from 2014 to the present, and how these kinds of conflicts can be avoided.
The war started in 2014 in Donbass it was also a kind of Russian invasion. Me personally, I was born there in Donbass. Donbass is not foreign land for me because it's my homeland. I was born and graduated school in the town. It was named Krasny Luch. It's in the very heart of occupied territory of so-called Lugansk Public Republic since 2014. And I have friends there from my school and from my childhood and from my teens. So I can say to you that since 2014 and until this period, there was a kind of so-called violation was not from Ukraine there. We can this understand. And also one important thing is that before 2014, in eastern Ukraine, there was no kind of so-called separation movement. For example, instead of western part, I mean Transcarpathian part of Ukraine, where so-called separation movement has been noticed before. In eastern Ukraine, in Donetsk region, Lugansk region, there was no kind of speaking about public republic or separatism until it was started, inspired by some politicians from Russian side. Also, I remember my childhood there. It was very surprising for me when I was exiting the town to villages, and I discovered that people in villages were speaking Ukrainian, just in the very east of Ukraine, because in cities we all spoke Russian. And that time and until now, most people in eastern Ukraine in cities are speaking Russian. And it's also remarkable that the most destroyed now in this phase of invasion, most destroyed cities like Mariupol, Volnovakha, and now Severodonetsk, all the cities in eastern Ukraine are Russian-speaking cities mostly. So, in this region, as for me, there was a kind of new Soviet nation was established there, or was made there by during Soviet period, because in city there were a kind of mix of ethnic groups, Russian, Ukrainians, Caucasians, Greeks, etc., etc. And all those people were mixed in a so-called kind of Soviet people. And until present time, all the 30 years of Ukrainian independence. Most of our generation and the previous generation continue to remember what was during Soviet time, and probably for some of them it was a prompt of returning to the so-called golden, but it was not really golden in any way, golden era. Now we cannot speak about this 8 years of war as a violence from Ukraine to Donbas region. It's a kind of Russian propaganda. Also, it was repeated to me by those military priests that I met in my village here near Kiev on March 12, if I remember exactly. So people in Donbas were struggling because of their government mainly, because in their government, so-called government, there are not actually good people, for pity, there. So sorry if not answer it's a precise question, but it was what I would like to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and as Father Alexandra mentioned, that his beatitude issued special petitions to be second. I'd like to conclude this difficult time, but still ask for God's forgiveness, ask for God's blessing to all of us in many years. And grant, O Lord, the prosperous and blessed life, health, salvation, and divine visitation to His Beatitude Metropolitan Deacon, Archbishop Boris, Bishop John Michael, and all people here gathered to support Ukraine. As well, we ask for mercy, peace, health, salvation, and divine visitation for those who are suffering, wounded, grieving, or displaced because of the war in Ukraine. Keep and protect all of us for many years.